Start recording. Hey, welcome back to the Alexandrian Codex. I'm Alex. This is Sword of the Stars, which is a pretty old game. I'm playing Sword of the Stars today because I've talked about it enough when I've been complaining about Stellaris, or commenting or critiquing on Stellaris, maybe is a more polite way to say that. I don't know how long I want this campaign to be. Sword of the Stars is published by the now defunct Cerberus Studios, or developed by them. They were acquired by Paradox Interactive, and then Sword of the Stars 2 came out, which was a complete fucking mess, clusterfuck, and just never got fixed, and slowly, quietly just swept away. But Sword of the Stars, the original, which ended up having 3 or 4 pretty substantial downloadable content, or expansion packs they were called at the time, is a really meaty and worthwhile addition to the 4X genre, or at least the space 4X genre. So there's no main campaign here. This has scenarios which are loosely set in the lore of the of this setting, which are kind of cool, I guess. Truth be told, I've never really played around with these. Whenever I played, I've just played on Skirmish, Upstart Apes. So the lore is, I vaguely remember it. There are 6 playable species: the humans, the Hivers, the Tarka, the Weir, the Zool, and the Marigi. The Marigi, I believe, were added by an expansion pack later on. I can't remember if the Zool were or not, but it starts out the humans were attacked by the Hivers, an insectoid race. The humans fought them off and then went out into space, so by canon the humans are kind of belligerent. God, I don't remember. Read the wiki. It's actually not bad. The lore and the fluff for this universe is actually not terrible. Pretty cool. So this is the one and only 2-dimensional map. Sword of the Stars is one of these games that tried to embrace 3-dimensional 4X maps to mixed degrees of success. Even after years of playing this, it's still a little mind-bending to me to try to get a good grip on what's going on. So my favorite map by far is the Real Space map. The Real Space map is more or less populated, centering here on Earth, I think, to look like our own space. So what better map to start out on? I'm gonna leave alliances on, random encounters are on, normal difficulty, this is all default, this is default. We're just gonna hop right in here. I don't even know. Yeah, what else would I call a safe game? So, well, I'm gonna go with human because they're generic. Yeah, so there's a fucking Wikipedia article worth of lore on every species in here. I suppose we can take a look at these. It's been a long, hard haul to the stars. Maybe you thought we'd never make it. Just a bunch of blood-simple monkeys doomed to bite each other's tails for all eternity? Well, guess what? We monkeys know something that the rest of you don't. We got the keys to the secret corridors of the universe, and we're gonna use them. Where we go, you can't follow. We're gonna come at you from the direction you least expect, and when we arrive, you'll find out why you don't ever try to kick a blood-simple monkey in the teeth. Humans are an air-breathing, land-based species of sentient mammals, evolved from a primate line which can be traced to a tiny tree-dwelling shrew. They're highly adaptive and thrive in a wide variety of environments, but seem to be most comfortable within a limited range of temperature, gravity, and atmospheric density, which mimic the conditions on their home world. The discovery of the so-called subspace dimension has allowed human propulsion engineers to take advantage of gravitational stress fractures of the universe. The principle at work is simple. Four-dimensional spacetime appears to have a crystalline structure, and massive bodies such as stars and black holes create distortions in spacetime continuum. These distortions are connected by breaches of spacetime known as subspace. In essence, subspace is an interstitial dimension, which connects one gravitational distortion to another. Connections between massive bodies in subspace are formed by the means of similar resonance frequencies between two gravitic nodes. The causes of this resonance cannot be fully explained without resorting to the esoteric extremes of star string theory, but the practical result is the distance between any two nodes in subspace is highly compressed, relative to the positions these two nodes might occupy in ordinary spacetime. A human vessel equipped with a node drive can enter and leave subspace at will, and thus traverse the compressed distance between nodes very rapidly. When the vessel emerges from subspace, again it will have traversed a great distance in a short period of time, thus effectively achieving superluminal speed. This faster-than-light travel is possible between any 2 points which are connected by a fracture line. Chains of nodal connection between stars are sometimes referred to as star streams, a term coined by the first subspace traveler Blaski Yao Xiang. Ah, God, my Mandarin bad. However, the phrase star stream can be somewhat misleading. Although the node connections between stars do form a sort of chain, if plotted through ordinary spacetime, a human ship traveling in subspace will not be crossing those regions of space as a physical object. The only evidence of a ship's passage in ordinary spacetime is a series of gravitational pulses, which indicate the presence of a vessel in subspace. Although a sufficiently sensitive scanner might be able to determine the mass of the human fleet in motion or the number of vessels traveling together, those vessels cannot be contacted or intercepted in ordinary spacetime. All forward maneuvering thrust aboard a human vessel is otherwise created by a simple mass-to-energy conversion, the principles of which are understood by all starfaring races. Humans appear to have undergone several conflicting stages of evolution on their homeworld. Bipedal, they walk erect, with a locking knee and hip structure evolved to allow maximum elevation from the ground and minimum exposure of skin to surface to direct radiation from their sun. This suggests a period of development in an arid, hot grassland region. However, the smooth, often hairless hide and subcutaneous fat of the human body would also suggest a water phase at some point during their evolution, when humans may have lived as a partially aquatic existence. In any case, the resulting modern human is a curious beast. Height in the adult human ranges from 100 to 200 centimeters, while mass ranges from about 50 to 150 kilograms, and a variety of superficial differences can be observed in pigmentation. Since these differences constitute so little variation in DNA, there is no practical difference between one race of humans and another. Humans divide into two sexes, male and female. There are some morphological differences between the two, but most other sentient species cannot tell two human genders apart. There are only minor differences in physical capacity and behavior between male and female humans. This seldom causes problems of more than a comedic variety. The exception to this rule would be the hivers, who seem to have a natural advantage in identifying male and female members of any species, perhaps due to their sensitivity to airborne estrogen. Hivers have been known to target females first in ship-to-ship boarding actions, which can have unpleasant psychological effects on human crews. Humans tend to form family groupings based on a simple breeding pair, one male, one female, their offspring from current and past pairings. A human female can produce several offspring during the course of her breeding career, although gestation and birthing of human infants can often be fatal without proper medical support. Due to the peculiarities of human physiology and psychology, life on the human homeworld became very unpleasant in the post-industrial age. The expected lifespan of the average human being was enormously increased due to advances in biology and medicine, but the breeding behavior of the majority of humans was not adjusted to take this into account. Many humans also refused to modify their industrial consumption and pollution. Accordingly, from the beginning of the so-called Industrial Revolution onward, humans began very rapidly to overpopulate and environmentally devastate their own home planet. Certain unfortunate distribution philosophies created a steadily growing number of humans with little or no access to vital resources, while others remain wealthy, overfed, and wasteful. The impoverished fringe on the population rapidly grew despite pressures of starvation, disease, and environmental toxins on their proliferation, until they outnumbered the so-called elite of the developed world by a factor of 10. The resulting planetary wars and limited nuclear exchanges were even more gruesome and destructive than the effects of overpopulation and careless industrialization had been. A sizable percentage of the homeworld's native species were lost, as well as roughly 70% of the human population. During the Reconstruction Age, a philosophical shift was observed in the surviving population of humans. The newly emerging consortium governments more easily signed armistices, environmental protection accords, and peace agreements. War, in general, was no longer universally revered as the most valuable and notable of all human endeavors, as had been in the case in previous centuries. A tendency toward cooperation and mutual support was encouraged. With the discovery of the node drive, a further motive for cooperation among various human consortia was founded, and the available resources of several governments were pooled to fund the research and development of the interstellar spaceship, christened the Nova Maria. The ship made several successful node jumps to and from nearby star systems before this first deep space colony was planned. As the Nova Maria boarded its passengers for its launch, intent on the first adventure of space colonization for the human species, tragedy struck. A hybrid nesting fleet consisting of a dreadnought and several support vessels arrived in the humans' home system. The planet defenses of the human race, which had never encountered another star-faring species, were negligible, and easily brushed aside by superior hyper firepower. The Nova Maria was destroyed in the first volley with all hands lost, and the human homeworld was bombarded from space for 48 hours afterward, resulting in massive devastation and catastrophic loss of life. Only the legacy of humankind's suicidal past eventually saved their home from complete destruction. After nearly 36 hours of struggle, the curators of the planet's former ICBM arsenal finally managed to reactivate the remaining stock of ancient missiles, which had been stored for decommission in the silos of the North American and Asian continents. A total of 3,000 fission and fusion bombs were launched at the descending Hyper fleet, destroying its full complement of destroyers and causing serious damage to its dreadnought. Thereafter, the remains of the Hyper fleet left orbit and lived on to parts presently unknown. Rebuilding from this devastation has taken the human race several years. Although the human homeworld is now lightly populated, there is little pressure to expand. Certain peculiarities of human psychology have re-emerged from their slumber. The human race has relearned its historical taste for war, and Soul Force, the united human military, never lacks for willing volunteers. Most human spacefarers have bitter memories of the Hyper attack and are old enough to have lost friends and family in the fire, flood, and chaos that followed. Accordingly, although the official motto of the Space Corps is Per ardua ad astra, through hardship the stars, the unofficial motto of humans in space is Repensum est canicula. Payback is a bitch. The discovery of subspace. The first subspace traveler, Blaski Yao Xiang, is a solar physicist assigned to Sol Prima Research Station. Early in the year 2371, Blaski was assigned to perform the first penetrating scan of Sol's deep core using a highly experimental energy resonance beam. One of these station's hardened research pods had been fitted with a ring-shaped scanning array. The pod was launched from the station with Blaski aboard to operate with the controls, while the rest of the station's 18-man crew eagerly monitored their screens. The moment the Blaski scan was initiated, however, the tiny research bell disappeared from view, and was no longer detectable by any means available to Sol Prima research and monitoring stations. Fearing that the scientist had suffered a catastrophic equipment failure or lost power, the station quickly dispatched a rescue team to search for his bell and the precious scanning array, hoping to recover the man and his equipment before decaying orbit could drop both into the sun's corona. After several minutes of frantic scan and search, Sol Prima received a feeble signal from Blaski's pod. The scientist's calm voice was heard from a distance of over 800 million kilometers in less than 10 seconds. He had been miraculously transported from a close orbit of Sol to a close orbit of the nearby gas giant Jupiter. For the next 2 hours, as his team of solar scientists desperately attempted to find some means of researching Reaching and rescuing their comrade, Blaski made a series of burst transmissions to the nearby Stormwatch probe in Jupiter's orbit. The full-length recording of these transmissions is still played to first-year students of node mechanics and can be a highly emotional experience for those who have never heard them before. As Blaski's probe slowly descended into Jupiter's atmosphere, the scientist gave a highly detailed account of his experience in subspace, detailing the gravitational current which seemed to pull him away from Sol's orbit with blinding speed. He expressed his regret in having expended so much fuel fighting the astounding gravimetric pull, and speculated that his pod might have traveled much further had he not engaged thrusts to fight the current within the starstream. When Blaski could add no further detail to his description of subspace, he calculated the volume of fuel he had expended in resisting the gravitational flux, the distance of direction he had traveled. His tentative conclusion was that the force acting upon his ship had been the gravitational pull of the nearby star Wolf 359. Later experiments in subspace travel proved him correct, as Wolf 359 was the nearest node in Sol's subspace chain. After carefully rechecking his data, including the level of energy he had used to initiate his solar scan, Blaski ejected his data core with the ship's tracking beacon attached. He died several minutes later in the crushing depths of Jupiter's liquid hydrogen sea. The amazing discovery and tragic death of this remarkable scientist became a planet-wide impetus for return to manned space exploration. It was often argued in the months immediately following that budget cuts which had forced ISA to place an unmanned probe in Jupiter's orbit rather than a manned research facility had cost Blaski his life. Yeah, and the Hivers, Tarka, Weir, Zul, and Marigi all have technology. They all have this exact same kind of Wikipedia article. But we can wait and hop back to that later. We can select a badge and an avatar. Oh, it really doesn't matter what we pick. I don't think. I'm gonna go with this, and that's good and generic looking. What color do I want? Oh, purple, definitely purple. Computer 1. You know what? Fuck it. While we're at it, I'm just gonna read through all of these. The first hour is just gonna be Alex reads, but that's the break. Them's the breaks, my dude. So already, we're seeing a pretty distinct theme to this game. There is some insistence on the importance of lore, right? And the more we look into this, I've talked about this quite a bit with playing Star Trek New Horizons, is the importance of establishing context in helping a player form a narrative, in getting immersion and getting investment. Context is very, very important. With Star Trek games, we already have the context from the TV series and the movies. With Stellaris, there is no context. The context is whatever you make up, which is fine, but also if you go to plant crops, if you walk out into a field and just throw seeds into the field, some will sprout, some will get beat down into the soil, get enough water, the random distribution between seeds will be good enough that they can sprout and become full, healthy plants. But if you take the time to plant those seeds and put them where they need to be and align them properly and treat them properly, you'll have much more success in creating something beautiful intentionally. Spontaneously, you can create something beautiful by accident, which is mostly how nature does it, by accident and vague biological intent. But when you're setting out to create a setting, when you're creating an environment that players are going to be in, or that readers are going to immerse themselves into, or that viewers are going to invest themselves in, context matters. So I love that, rather unapologetically, the massive lore dump we get before this. We are the children, faithful sons of the Hive. Our way is patience. Our way is strength. We do not rush, as others do, to devour the universe. The Hive grows slowly, but its grit is strong. What is ours is ours, and will not be taken from us easily. Raise your hand against the least of us, and you will face the fury of all. We are all brothers. and the love we share is stronger than death. Human spacers call this species hivers, or more informally, bugs, because of their resemblance to countless insect species found on Earth. Size notwithstanding, hivers do not have many features in common with terrestrial insects, especially when it comes to social organization and physical appearance. Nonetheless, they are a fully sentient spacefaring race. Hivers may be encountered in any part of the galaxy. The location of the hiver homeworld is, presently, unknown. They are highly adaptable and able to thrive in a variety of environments. However, hivers can colonize worlds which many other races would find inhospitable due to low gravity or atmospheric density. Hivers move through space using a combination of slower-than-light and instantaneous transport technology. A fleet of hiver ships driven by standard STL engines begin by traveling a great distance the hard way. It may take them months or years, moving at sub-relativistic speed to reach their destination. Once they arrive, however, the hivers set up a massive ring-shaped teleportation device. Should other hive ships choose to follow, they can instantaneously travel to the newly erected gate from any other gate in the Hiver Empire. This doesn't emphasize how fucking cool and overpowered this is. It's fucking amazing. You take years and years and years to expand, so as the hivers, you're not really rushing much. But once you actually get someplace, you can just instantaneously teleport one massive fleet anywhere in your empire without having to worry about logistics or fronts or how long it's going to take. It's just boop, boop, boop. They're really, really interesting to play as. Contrast that with the humans, who they just can't be attacked. Your ships can't be attacked when you're en route from planet to planet, and generally you travel faster than anyone else. It's, God, I love how all the different species travel differently, and that the different FTL methods, there's no attempt to make them balanced. They're just completely different. And if Stellaris had the chutzpah to try something like this, I would really like it, rather than just cutting out my favorite FTL kinds. FTL types. Oh, Sweetwater. Despite appearances. Oh shit, I didn't. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, bookmark this. Order to do. Thank you. Yeah, I'll look into that after the stream. Yeah. We're done with Fallout 3 now, so this is probably going to be a pretty small series. I don't know, this might get kind of long. But, yeah, I am considering what I want to do now. Or play next. Despite appearances, hivers are not insects in the physical sense. They're much larger than any Terran insect, ranging from 40 to 250 kilograms in mass and 90 to 450 centimeters in height. They have 6 limbs, but the upper 4 are equipped with opposable digits. Most hivers have a pair of wings on the dorsal surface of their bodies, but these seem to be vestigial and useless for flight. A hiver's body is partially covered in chitin, but the shell is not an exoskeleton. Hivers have an interior skeleton, a full array of internal organs, and a circulatory system similar to that of a terrestrial bird or mammal. The chitin is not used for tissue support, it's adapted to serve as armor. Some scientists speculate that the bright colors and patterns of a hiver's body also convey a great deal of social information to other hivers. In space, hivers tend to live and move in large family groups. All of the members of any given hiver fleet are usually related to one another by birth. The hiver species is divided into 3 physical and social classes: worker, warrior, and breeder. All 3 classes are very different from one another, and might appear to be entirely different species to the casual observer. A worker bug looks, thinks, and behaves so much differently than a warrior or breeder, it's sometimes difficult to believe all 3 could have hatched from the same cluster of eggs. Workers are the most common type of hiver, making up around 70% of the species. The average height of a hiver worker is 150 centimeters, and they generally have a mass around 70 kilograms. Worker bugs do not have sexual organs or any psychological quirks related to breeding, but they are intelligent, sensitive, and curious. and is prone to being interested in art, science, and culture as the average member of any other sentient species. Workers create the vast majority of Hiver art and literature. They also make up the vast majority of Hivers engaged in scientific, technical, and academic fields. Workers can pursue almost any occupation in their society. They fill the ranks in all walks of life, from merchants and street sweepers to architects, farmers, and miners, regardless of what profession they pursue. However, the efforts of any given worker are always directed to one purpose: to strengthen, protect, unify, or glorify its family, and to serve the interests of its mother. Warriors are the second most common type of Hiver, making up around 25% of the species. Of all Hivers, the warriors have the largest variety when it comes to superficial physical appearances. They can range from 50 centimeters to 250 centimeters in height, and may have super light bodies or massive armored frames. They also sport a wide variety of chitin adaptations, including markings, which may be super bright, or subtle camouflage in any kind of terrain. Warrior bugs are generally created to serve a specific function. They're tailored during gestation to perform a specific task as adults. Various features of the warrior are subject to change: size, strength, toughness, and thickness of its shell, resistance to radiation, extremes of heat and cold. Some warriors are even adapted to be able to withstand vacuum for limited periods of time. Warriors are generally engaged in high casualty professions. Deep-sea diving, mining, Arctic exploration, toxic waste disposal are all generally handled by warrior bugs, as are other tasks involving similar levels of personal risk. Accordingly, it's no accident that warriors, although rare in Hiver society at large, make up a disproportionate percentage of personnel aboard spacefaring vessels. Warriors do not have sexual organs, but their bodies produce a powerful array of hormones, making them far more prone to aggression, ambition, and powerful mood swings. Their interactions are more insular than those of any other Hiver class. Warriors often form secret societies, join dueling academies, or participate in athletic contests to channel their aggression. They tend to receive less formal education than workers do, but far more vocational and martial training. Like workers, warrior bugs are loyal to their families, but they're fanatically obedient to their mothers, aware from earliest childhood that they've been born to die for the queen, and consider it their honor and privilege to do so. Within any Hiver family, a small community of breeders, a female Hiver or princess, and her coterie of male princes will rule over a large number of warrior and worker bugs. The princess of any given hive is its absolute ruler and reason for being. Her workers and warriors will be loyal to the death, and devote themselves to her welfare for the entirety of their lives. The workers and warriors of the hive are simultaneously her children, her employees, her servants, her subjects, and her zealous cult of personality. A Hiver princess is many times larger than a standard Hiver. Depending on her care and feeding, she can grow to a height of 400 centimeters and a mass of nearly 400 kilograms. Her wings and chitin are largely ornamental and often will be cut or painted to enhance her natural beauty. A Hiver princess can produce any number of Hiver eggs, especially if she has regular access to a male. The eggs she produces are largely generic when they leave her body. It is the care she gives them during infancy that produces their futures. Variations of light, heat, nutrition will produce a variety of changes in the developing Hiver, allowing its mother to not only determine whether the resulting offspring will be a worker, warrior, or breeder, but to assign it a number of other physical and mental characteristics. The Hivers are, they're more like ants than they are like Klingons, but they do kind of have a warrior vibe to them. They're pretty good. They're matriarchal. They're not a hive mind, so they're not quite like ants. Individual Hivers do have self-awareness. In Sword of the Stars 2, there's some lore about a Hiver converting to Christianity, I think, being the first Hiver priest of the Holy Catholic Church, or the Roman Catholic Church. There's some weird shit out there. So Hivers are cult of personality, matriarchal society. Oh, the one thing she cannot do is reproduce herself. Although she can create any number of workers, warriors, and male breeders, no princess can lay an egg which will develop into another princess. The power and privilege of birthing female hivers is reserved for the High Queen, a nigh-mystical and legendary female breeder who rules the entire species from the hiver homeworld. Hiver princes. Hiver males are somewhat similar to their female counterparts, although they're somewhat smaller. They average from around 350 centimeters in height and mass to the neighborhood of 200 kilograms. Physically speaking, they can be recognized by their size, the extremely bright colors of their chitin, the length and strength of their wings, the sharp warrior-like projections of second pair of limbs, the so-called dueling blades. Socially speaking, a male breeder is essentially a free agent. Unlike the warrior and worker bugs of this family, his devotion to any one hive is not strong. The reasons for this are obvious. A female hiver would generally seek out males which are not her own sons for breeding purposes. Although a hiver princess can reproduce with males hatched from her own eggs, if given no other option, this practice quickly leads to stagnation both socially and genetically, if it were commonplace. So they're not super incestuous if they can help it. Breeder males, accordingly, are the only hivers who are socially and psychologically capable of moving from one hive to another at will. They're more self-interested than any other class of hiver. Far weaker attachments to their mothers and families of origin than would be normal for in a worker or a warrior. A prince's chief loyalty is to himself, his breeding partner, and to the hive whom he is a father to. Highly competitive, career-oriented, and motivated to succeed, a hiver prince seeks out positions of authority and opportunities to lead, perform in public, or otherwise draw attention to themselves. A prince's ability to draw attention to himself and his achievements makes him a desirable mate, and puts a premium on his services. Since heredity in a hiver is based 60% on the contribution of a male, a prince who's cunning, strong, gifted, or beautiful can become a prize that many hives will vie to win. Savage wars have been fought over the kidnapping or defection of a valuable prince. Wars are common amongst hivers. The hiver military impulse is generally driven by population pressure for the urge for supremacy. Because hiver princesses can produce countless offspring per year, the population of hivers in any one place can spike very quickly, leading to intense competition for space and resources. A hive under pressure has one of two options. Either they can cull their own population or eliminate the competition. There are more than 30 words for suicide in the hiver language. Many hiver families choose to go on the warpath rather than institute any other population control measure. Wars of this kind are grim and brutal battles to the death, in which the full time and resources of all hive members are devoted to destroying the enemy hive and its princess. Occasionally, an ambitious hiver princess will take it into her head to become the High Queen of her species. The global wars of domination in hiver history are many. Some have assumed legendary status over the time. The destruction of loss of life associated with the battle for the throne has often left the planet almost completely depopulated, with only a few exhausted clans left alive in the rubble. Due to the quirks of hiver physiology, death is not necessarily the end of any hiver's life. A great deal of short and long-term memory is stored in crystalline form in a hiver's brain case. These chemicals can be extracted intact for up to 72 hours after death. With the help of a princess, who passes these chemicals through her own digestive tract, the memory of a fallen hiver can be injected into the thorax of a freshly laid egg. The result is a newborn hiver, which has many of the memories, skills, and experiences of the hiver who died. Fucking reincarnation bugs. This form of limited reincarnation is central to the spiritual beliefs of the hiver population, who conceive of the divine as a female hiver, constantly devouring and renewing the universe. It is also very useful in preserving valuable skills, giving hivers access to information which would otherwise be lost. However, the practice has led to a few unfortunate incidents, in which some hivers which have been exposed to a lethal plague were carried back to the queen for renewal, resulting in a predictable disaster for the whole family. Ant Krogans? Kind of. Krogans aren't biologically immortal and can't be... They're Hindu ant Krogans, maybe. Buddhist? But... Well, it's, particularly useful one, so maybe it is Hindu. Hyber art. Due to the extremely strong emotional attachment from most Hybers have to their mothers, a great deal of their art, sculpture, and literature is devoted to glorifying their mothers, extended families, and ancestors. A great deal of their engineering and architecture is also based upon the female form, or on scenes vaguely remembered from the hatching period. Hybers seem to find curvilinear shapes comforting and pleasing to the eye, and often design storage compartments and living quarters that remind them of the geometric egg chambers they slept in as infants. Buildings and ships are sometimes highly suggestive of a female Hyber's body, may even be direct portraits of a given princess. That's a very cool symbol. I kinda hate that color. Is that better? Is that my favorite portrait? I think that's my favorite portrait. Yeah, well, we're not playing as them. We're just setting them up. Moving on to the Tarkas. Now, it's taken about 17 minutes for each of these. They sound kind of Buddhist. Well, Buddhist, yeah, they're a lot more militant and self-destructive than popular interpretations of either of those faiths. I hate all of these. Let's go with that. Now the fucking dragons. Yeah, let's go with this. I'm playing as... I don't know. I haven't figured out who I'm playing as. I'll probably play as humans because this is the first look at this on the channel and the humans are the default race. My favorite species are the Lear, the fucking space dolphins that teleport everywhere, are way cooler than anyone else and probably overpowered. I really like the Hybers as well. I could be convinced to do different campaigns as all of them, but we'll just see how this series goes at first. If any of you alien monstrosities could speak in a civilized tongue, all of this would be relatively easy to explain. We Tarka are a simple people. When all is said and done, we cleave the universe in clean, straight lines. We show our faces in battle rather than our tails. We want what is ours by right of superior arms and tactics. That is the universe. Well, so be it. Have at you. Join the fray as joyously as we do. After all, my friends, war's nothing personal. The Tarka are a reptilian species, sharing many outward physical characteristics with terrestrial lizards. Although their internal structures are highly evolved brains are very different from anything seen in the reptile species of Earth, their appearance has nonetheless earned them a variety of derogatory nicknames among human spacers, commonly referred to them as lizards or crocs. Not much is known about the origins of the Tarka, but scientists have speculated that their species must have evolved in a dense arboreal environment, because they have retained many features we still associate with tree-dwelling species. They can live in a variety of gravities and temperature zones, but they seem to prefer warmer worlds for their large colonies. Their culture is very ancient and has been remarkably stable in the long term, allowing for hundreds of thousands of years of recorded history and over 500 years as a spacefaring race. Tarka ship schematics and weapon systems fall within standard parameters. The Carcasian warp drive, however, is a unique technological achievement. No other species has mastered this unique, faster-than-light travel, and the secrets of Tarkasian warp engine are jealously guarded. The basic principle at work is the Tarkasian faster-than-light system appears to be the generation of a warp field, an envelope of force which surrounds the body of a Tarkasian ship. Within this envelope, the ship is essentially a non-event in space-time, having very limited interaction with the standard 4 dimensions of the continuum. Once the warp engine of a Tarkasian ship is fired, the normal physical laws governing mass, energy, and acceleration no longer apply to that ship. Accordingly, a Tarkasian vessel can achieve superluminal speeds and travel at these speeds for any distance. Its range limited by the available fuel for thrust and by the available power for the generation of the warp envelope. The external characteristics of the Tarka race point to an origin among reptiles, but they are as far removed from their lizard-like ancestors as humans are from tree shrews from which they evolved. Tarkas have a coat of scales over their bodies, and the patterns and thickness which can vary with the individual, though males traditionally have thicker and tougher scales than females, especially as they grow older. Tarkas have a set of three eyelids and claw-like nails on both fingers and feet, which can become thick and sharp if they are allowed to grow. Tarkas have 5 digits and an opposable thumb on their hands. Their feet are also prehensile. Their tails are muscular, shorter in the male than the female, and capable of manipulating objects and striking with significant force. It is standard practice for a Tarkasian male or martial artist to use his or her tail in combat. Internally, Tarka bear little resemblance to terrestrial reptiles. They have a very large and complex brain, warm blood, and an advanced circulatory system. A Tarka's heart has 5 chambers. 4 are engaged in standard respiration. 1 is activated by the Tarka's adrenal system. This auxiliary chamber rapidly flutters when the Tarka's fight-or-flight reflexes are engaged, pumping a complex stew of chemicals and stimulants into the bloodstream. These act on all aspects of Tarka physiology, doubling or trebling the speed at which nervous impulses are transmitted, greatly dampening the feedback associated with pain or injury, profoundly affecting brain function, and flooding the body with blood and hormones. The resulting battle fury is legendary and renders an adult Tarka an extremely dangerous foe when the little drum is beating. Tarkas are omnivorous, able to consume or digest a wide variety of plant and animal foodstuffs. They enjoy a natural lifespan of about 100 years, barring injury or disease. Tarka have 2 gender and a standard mode of sexual reproduction. Adult female produces an unfertilized proto-egg within her body at standard intervals. If a male does not fertilize the egg, it passes from her body and she disposes of it. See sidebar A lady's favor. Fertilization of Tarka's eggs occur in utero, and once fertilized, the egg will remain in the mother's body for several weeks, forming an extremely dense mask of compressed nutrients and a tough, thick, leathery outer skin. Thereafter, the egg passes from the female's body and begins an independent cycle of growth. If tended properly, the infant will hatch from its egg in approximately 18 to 24 months. Tarka females average 120 to 180 centimeters in height and weigh from 60 to 100 kilograms. They reach their full adult size within 20 years of hatching and maintain the same dimensions throughout their entire lives. Tarka males, by contrast, can go through 2 distinct phases of growth and development. The standard development from egg to adult, which their female counterparts undergo, and a second stage of maturity, which begins later, triggered by a special dietary regime. Tarkas refer to this secondary growth cycle as the change. Not all Tarka males will undergo the change. In fact, it's estimated only 1 in 1,000 Tarka ever reaches this phase. When the change occurs, however, a male Tarka undergoes a profound physical and psychological transformation, which affects every aspect of his life. The production of sex hormones in his body increases, which causes him to develop a broad spectrum of sexual traits. Firstly, he becomes fertile. Although he's been able to perform as a sexual being from early adolescence, it is not until the change he begins producing viable sperm and becomes capable of fertilizing an egg. Along with this primary change in his reproductive capacity, he also develops a host of secondary sexual characteristics, which signal his availability to females and enable him to compete vigorously for mates. His physical size increases enormously. He may grow up to 50 additional centimeters in height. His mass is likely to double. Some senior males may weigh in at 200 kilograms or more. His vocal cords thicken and his voice becomes louder, deeper, and more resonant. The coloring, arrangement, and thickness of his scales will change radically, often forming entirely new marking patterns. His personality is substantially altered as well. In general, he becomes much more aggressive, extroverted, ambitious, and prone to intense emotional outbursts and mood swings. The pheromones that a mature male exudes have a variety of psychological effects on other Tarka. Younger males who have not undergone the change seem to find their senior counterparts extremely magnetic. They're docile and cooperative towards seniors and easily influenced by their charismatic leadership. By contrast, other senior males will immediately become hostile and competitive towards a male of their own stature, reacting automatically to every signal of maturity with anger. The rival's voice, coloring, bearing, and attitudes will all be found offensive in an almost cellular level. If the two are brought within range of one another's pheromonal signatures, the effect increases many-fold. Put 2 senior males in one room and a physical altercation is almost sure to result. Female Tarkas, by contrast, have far less emotional reaction towards senior males. Although they find seniors personally, professionally, and sexually attractive, they do not mirror the docility of the younger male counterparts. Culturally speaking, female Tarkas tend to view all male Tarkas, both young and old, with a certain amount of prejudice, regarding them as emotionally unstable, prone to poor judgment. However, the ability of a senior male to command and control his juniors is often very useful in politics, in the military, and in business affairs. Most female Tarka are inclined to harness and direct this power rather than suppress it. Tarka society is extremely stratified, with many castes and many tiers of hierarchy in every walk of life. Reproductive viability for Tarka males is a privilege, with a high premium, and a prize which every junior male desires. Unfortunately, achieving the change is often difficult for Tarka males who have not been born into a family with great wealth and power. Reproductive viability carries a high premium, and many females must cooperate in order to raise one male to full maturity. Accordingly, males who cannot buy their way into favored state must earn it, and are highly motivated to do so through success in their careers. Male Tarkas are discriminated against in the majority of educated professions, and are unlikely to rise high in any field which does not involve a great deal of creative passion, personal risk, or violence. Although they're not forbidden to become diplomats, scientists, technicians, or academics, they are subjected to a great deal of sexual prejudice, and it's difficult for them to be taken seriously by entrenched female counterparts. By contrast, a sizable majority of Tarkas in high-risk physical pursuits are male: common soldiers, firefighters, pilots, spacers, miners, etc., and the same is true of many creative and artistic fields, where the stereoscope of the impassioned male Tarka is not considered a drawback. Stereotype, not stereoscope. Stereotype. The rarity of senior males among the Tarka population was a subject of some interest to human biologists who for many years could not understand the process by which an average Tarka male could become a senior. For years after first contact, these questions remained unanswered. Why did so few Tarka males achieve the change? And of those who did, why did some undergo the change so early in life while others waited literally decades longer to go through the same physical process? The change was a random event, visited only by a tiny percentage of the male population. Why was it so common in members of the highest castes, and less often achieved by lower caste Tarkas? Was the caste system based on genetic tendency to produce more viable males? And if this was so, why were male Tarkas from higher origins able to achieve this change so readily after they made some noteworthy contribution to society? Was there some correlation between social recognition these Tarkas achieved and the production of male sex hormones? Due to social taboos surrounding the open discussion of the change and its triggering mechanism, it took years to find the answers to these questions. The key to understanding was finally discovered not in the laboratory, but in the library. The answer was revealed when our linguists were finally able to translate Tarka gutter dialect. A great wealth of pornographic literature had been written in these lower caste languages over thousands of years, and a sizable majority of the fantasy scenarios in Tarka pornography are directly concerned with the change and its aftermath. The mechanism by which Tarka males achieve the change is simple. They must eat unfertilized eggs of Tarka females. Because these eggs are her personal and highly sacred property, because all Tarka females are aware of the prize that their eggs represent, no female will relinquish an egg to a male without reason. If she does not have a worthy male available at the end of her egg cycle, a female Tarka will simply eat the egg herself. The act of giving an egg to a male as a reward for his achievements or for services rendered is sometimes referred to, in more civilized circles, but always obliquely. The act carries a delicately euphemistic name, Shalmektok, or the lady's favor. No data is available on how many eggs a male Tarka must consume in order to trigger the change. There's some evidence that the onset of the change may vary with the individual. However, it's obvious that a single egg, or even several, is not sufficient to trigger the transformation. Seems much more likely the change is brought on by a fairly steady diet of eggs over a significant period of time. It's also apparent that when a male Tarka consumes even a single unfertilized egg, the broth of fertility chemicals consumed has an immediate, powerful effect on his body and mind. All authors willing to discuss the subject describe the consumption of an egg as an ecstatic, almost psychedelic experience, eminently desirable, even if it does not immediately lead to the onset of maturity. Once the mechanism of the change was revealed, the behavior of lower caste and less affluent Tarka males was far more easily understood. Their lives can be seen as a never-ending quest for reproductive viability. All the privileges that go with it, their willingness to accept great personal risk, is balanced by what they perceive as the possibility of great personal gain. Achieving the change is an important goal for any male Tarka, but only 1 in 1,000 is ever able to become a father. Under the circumstances, male Tarka, who are not born into wealth and power, are extremely motivated to prove their worth to females that surround them, and to achieve as much wealth and status as possible. Yeah, they got some interesting reproductive stuff going on there. I like that it's an almost psychedelic experience. Those are some fucked up eggs. Tarka remain in the egg phase of development for a long time. The infant Tarka gestates with a protective shell for a period of almost 2 years between fertilization and hatching. During a substantial portion of this gestation period, a Tarka infant within the egg is self-aware. Jesus, that would be horrifying, and alert to its environment, responsive to stimuli and communicative with the outside world. Because the Tarka infant is sensitive and aware during this prolonged period of confinement, the care and stimulation of egg-bound Tarka is considered very important. However, incubation academies and ovatariums are a long-standing tradition in Tarka society. Most fertilized eggs are handed to an ovatarium, god that's a great word, ovatarium, within a few weeks of being laid. The regimen provided by any given ovatarium will vary according to professional and caste affiliation of the parents, as well as their financial and social positions. Certain prestigious incubation academies are reserved for the eggs of the highest ranking and wealthiest Tarkas, while others are considered very desirable for those within military service, academic excellence, or artistic achievement within their futures. There are often long waiting lists for the most exclusive ovatariums, and many secondary education programs will not accept candidates who have not been gestated in an ovatarium in the appropriate standing. Fuck that! That's horrible! Oh, sorry, our university only accepts babies who were... This place sounds like communism? No, this is nothing like communism. There's nothing vaguely communistic about this. This is, like, incredibly capitalist. And hierarchical. Yeah, this is like, well, you can't get into Harvard unless you've been to this preparatory school, or you can't get into, Yale unless you've been to this prep school, unless you went to all the right schools and got the right grades. State takes the eggs? No. The state's not taking the eggs. People are giving their eggs to institutions, to schools. It's like rich people sending their kids off to tutors and stuff like that, or sending their kids off to boarding school, not border school, boarding school. This is very common practice. Stop. Okay. In any ovatarium, trained professionals attend to the physical needs of the egg, turning it often and maintaining a proper course of heat and light. The developing hatchling is also provided with a great deal of intellectual and social stimulation. However, Tarka hatchlings are able to perceive light and movement through the shell casing, which becomes increasingly translucent as they grow, and they can hear a full range of sounds. Primary education during the egg phase includes a wide variety of interactive games, songs, stories, conversations, and exercises, with developing eggs in contact both with their adult caregivers and other infants and nearby eggs. Occasional visits by the parents are usually encouraged. When the parents return to claim their offspring during the hatching ceremony, a ritualized graduation event which marks the Tarka's emergence to the world and his or her exit from the safety and security of the egg. Although they cannot respond verbally to caregivers during gestation, most Tarka hatchlings respond to stimuli by knocking on the shell from within. Ovatarium workers throughout history have taught infant Tarkas to use this form of communication over many thousands of years. This Morse code, like egg knock, has become a language in and of itself. The egg knock code is in fact the only language which is universal to all Tarkas, who otherwise speak a wide variety of planetary, regional, and caste dialects as adults. Accordingly, the EKC is commonly used in fast and light communications throughout the Tarkasian Empire, as it contains a vocabulary of approximately 4,000 words, can be roughly understood and translated by every member of the species. Good God. Gotten through half of this. The Tarka military hierarchy is unusual in Tarka society, in that the vast majority of soldiers, pilots, and fleet officers are male Tarka, while the majority of commissioned officers and graduates from elite military academies are female. Within operating fleet, this leads to dynamic to a dynamic where almost 90% of all commissioned officers are female. A single female or small, tightly knit cadre of females is often in charge of an entire crew of immature Tarka males, who are highly motivated both personally and professionally to distinguish themselves in combat. As an example, the typical crew manifest of a Tarkasian destroyer would include a female officer carrying the rank of captain, a pair of immature males at the helm, a navigation communication post, a female technician officer in the engine room, 4 to 6 male gunners. On a larger vessel, the technical officer would also have several younger males under her command and possibly a junior female engineer. The command staff on the bridge would include a female commander and a small cadre of junior officers who were either less experienced females or male non-commissioned officers who had risen through the rank due to distinguished service. By contrast, authority positions outside the command deck or drive room are far more likely to be occupied by experienced male officers than female officers. It's rare for a female Tarka to acquire the experience necessary to become a gunnery sergeant, for example. The hierarchy of Tarka and sex-based positions of authority produce highly effective combat units, so long as the officers are always present to keep their men under control and working together. The officers aboard any ship are highly prized for this reason. The command mode of any Tarkasian vessel will be more heavily armored than any other part of the ship module. Protecting their command staff is not only desirable for personal and social reasons to the junior male crew, it also helps avoid the inevitable chaos which results from a typical Tarkasian crew complement when a typical Tarkasian crew complement is left to its own devices. Junior males without leadership are rarely able to establish a clear chain of command. This system of organization would have a tendency to break down if senior males were not available in the higher ranks of fleet command, of course. Senior males are accordingly promoted for distinguished service and serve a necessary function when it's necessary to control a group of ships and personnel. Ergo, while the vast majority of commissioned officers below a rank of colonel are females, the highest ranking officer of the line in any given battle group will almost always be a senior male. In combat, a senior commands quick and absolute obedience. His image and the sound of his voice are sufficient to keep several ships organized and acting on his orders. Ooh, did we put in a cut here? It's been an hour. Yeah, I'm gonna put in a cut here. Tune in next time for Alex reads some more shit, and we might get started. If you're watching on Twitch, I'm gonna keep streaming. If you're watching on YouTube, I guess this is it for today. Let me know if you want the series to keep going, who I should play as, what kind of maps I should play on, etc, etc, etc. Let me know your thoughts. You know the deal. Make sure to comment, share, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, toodaloo, take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.